Hey everyone, and welcome back to the deep dive. You guys are going to love this one. It's a blog post titled Moments of Sudden Enlightenment, 35 Insights from 2024.
Interesting title.
It is. And it comes from a blog called Sandu Life Blog, and it's described as a place to speak your mind freely.
So we might get some interesting stuff here.
Oh yeah, definitely. And what makes this deep dive particularly interesting is that it was just published on January 3rd, 2025.
Wow, so it's really fresh.
It's like we're getting a sneak peek into the blogger's resolutions or something.
Exactly. Instead of vague promises, we get these super specific insights. I'm really curious to see what they are.
Me too. Let's jump right in.
Oh.
So the blogger starts off strong with health, both physical and mental.
Okay, makes sense. A good place to start the new year.
Right. The first insight is physical health is always the most important thing. Pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah, I'd say so.
But then they go on to say the essence of anxiety is fear, whether it's fear of the unknown or fear of losing control. That's where it starts to get interesting for me. Yeah, definitely. And, that connection between our physical and mental well-being, it's something we see discussed more and more these days.
Absolutely. I remember a time when I was totally consumed by anxiety. I was working on this huge project at work, and I was so afraid of failing.
Oh, I hate that feeling.
It was awful. I couldn't sleep. I wasn't eating. I was a complete mess.
So what did you do? How'd you get through it?
It took me a while, but I realized the more I focus on that fear, the worse it got.
Yeah, it can really spiral.
Exactly. I had to find a way to change my mindset.
So it's like the blogger is saying, you got to break free from that cycle of worry.
Exactly. And it looks like they offer a solution. Okay. Their next few insights really emphasize that. They say courage is the only way to combat fear, and that the opposite of anxiety is concrete action.
Concrete action, huh? I wonder what they mean by that.
Well, I think they're talking about taking specific steps to address whatever is causing the fear or anxiety, instead of getting stuck in your head.
So not just thinking about it, but actually doing something about it.
Right. Break the problem down into smaller chunks and tackle them one by one.
Makes sense. So in your example with the work project, instead of freaking out about the whole thing, you could have focused on just finishing one task at a time.
Exactly. Create a plan, set deadlines, and focus on making progress one step at a time.
And each step you take builds momentum and chips away at that feeling of overwhelm.
I like that. And I guess the courage part comes in when you push yourself to take action even when you're still afraid.
It's not about not being afraid. It's about doing it anyway, even if you are.
That's a really good point. It's like proving to yourself that you're stronger than you think.
And that can have a ripple effect on other areas of your life, too. The more you confront those fears and take action, the more confident you become.
It's like a positive feedback loop.
Exactly. All right, so we've talked about health, anxiety, and taking action. What's next?
Well, insights number 7 and 8 take a slightly different direction. They talk about the importance of inner freedom and setting boundaries.
Interesting. How does that tie into what we've been talking about?
Well, think about it. When you're super anxious or afraid, you often feel trapped, like you're not in control of your own life.
I can see that.
Setting boundaries is a way to reclaim that control. The blogger says establishing and maintaining one's boundaries can reduce anxiety and boost self-esteem.
So what does that look like in real life? What does it mean to set boundaries?
I think it can take many forms, like saying no to commitments that you don't have the time or energy for.
Or setting limits on how much time you spend on social media or watching TV.
Right. It's about protecting your time and energy and emotional well-being. By setting clear boundaries, you create space for yourself to focus on the things that truly matter to you.
So it's about being intentional with your time and energy.
Exactly. It sounds like boundaries are essential for reducing anxiety and living authentically.
It makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Think about a time when you felt overwhelmed or resentful because you said yes to something you didn't really want to do.
Oh, I've been there plenty of times. You end up feeling stretched too thin and like you don't have enough time for yourself.
That's a huge sign that your boundaries need some work.
I'm starting to see how all these insights connect. You take care of your physical health. Then you tackle anxiety through action. Then you set boundaries to create a more balanced and fulfilling life.
It's like a step-by-step guide to well-being.
And that leads us perfectly into the next set of insights, which focus on the power of our thoughts. The blogger says that thoughts in our minds are not facts, especially negative ones.
Wait, hold on. Are you saying that our thoughts aren't real?
It's not that they're not real, it's more that we shouldn't always believe them, especially the negative ones.
So we shouldn't just accept them as truth without questioning them.
Exactly. We have the power to choose which thoughts we focus on and which ones we let go of.
Okay, I like that. It's empowering.
And there's actually some really interesting science behind this. Have you ever heard of neuroplasticity?
Yeah, I have.
Woof.
It's the idea that our brains can change and adapt over time, right?
Exactly. Our brains are constantly rewiring themselves based on our experiences and our thoughts.
So if we're constantly thinking negative thoughts, we're basically wiring our brains for negativity.
It's like creating a groove in a record. The more you play it, the deeper that groove becomes.
I see. So if I keep telling myself I'm not good enough, my brain will start to believe it.
It's more likely yes.
Uh-huh.
But the good news is it works both ways. If we make a conscious effort to focus on positive thoughts, we can actually rewire our brains for positivity.
Wow, that's amazing. We have the power to change our own brains.
We do. And the blogger emphasizes the power of self-suggestion, saying the power of self-suggestion is very strong. What you believe yourself to be, you become.
It's like that saying, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Exactly. Our beliefs really do shape our reality.
So instead of saying I'm terrible at public speaking, you could say something like, I'm working on becoming a more confident speaker.
It's about shifting our self-talk from negative to positive. And in doing so, we can actually start to change our beliefs and behaviors.
I'm starting to see how powerful this can be.
This is really interesting stuff. Okay, so we've learned that our thoughts are powerful and we can rewire our brains for positivity. Where do we go from here?
The blogger's next few insights offer some guidance on how to harness that power. They say we should be observing and utilizing our thoughts.
What exactly does that mean? Do we just sit around and think about our thoughts all day?
It's more about becoming aware of our thoughts without judgment, noticing the patterns, the themes, the stories we tell ourselves.
So becoming an observer of our own minds.
Exactly.
That sounds pretty challenging.
It can be, especially with all the distractions we face these days. But even taking a few minutes each day to simply observe your thoughts can be really insightful.
And how do we utilize those thoughts?
That's where the real work comes in. Once you become more aware of your thoughts, you can start to choose which ones you want to focus on and which ones you want to let go of.
So challenge the negative thoughts and replace them with more positive ones. You know, I find it really difficult to stay focused with all the distractions these days. I'm constantly checking my phone, getting sidetracked by emails. It's like my brain is fragmented.
You and everyone else. The blogger actually addresses this directly, saying, stay focused, stay away from fragmented entertainment, and protect your precious brain.
Uh-huh. They must have known I'd be reading this. So how do we protect our brains from all that noise?
It takes conscious effort. It's about setting boundaries with technology, being more intentional about how you spend your time, and prioritizing activities that nourish your mind.
You know, it's funny, we started this whole thing talking about physical health. But it seems like mental health is just as important, maybe even more so in a way.
I agree. They're definitely interconnected. We can't neglect one at the expense of the other.
This has been quite the deep dive already, and we've barely scratched the surface. I'm already feeling inspired to make some changes. How about you?
For sure. And there's still so much more to explore. We'll be back soon to delve into the rest of the blogger's insights and see what other wisdom we can glean from their moments of sudden enlightenment.
I can't wait. See you in part 2. All right, welcome back to the deep dive. We're jumping right back into those moments of sudden enlightenment. You're ready to go.
Absolutely. Let's see what the blogger has in store for us next.
Well, it seems like they want to keep pushing us forward on this self-improvement journey. Insight number 21 talks about the importance of having a beginner's mindset.
Beginner's mindset.
Yeah, they actually quote Steve Jobs, "Stay hungry, stay foolish." Remember that one?
Oh yeah, classic Jobs.
It's a great quote, but honestly, I sometimes struggle with that feeling of being a beginner.
Yeah.
You know, especially after working in the same field for so long.
I get that. It can be tough to stay open to new ideas when you feel like you've seen it all.
Exactly, but maybe that's exactly what the blogger's getting at. It's not about literally being a beginner in everything, but more about cultivating that sense of curiosity, that willingness to learn that we often have when we're first starting out.
So like approaching life with a sense of wonder and openness, no matter how much experience you have.
Exactly. And it's interesting because when you think about successful people across different fields, the ones who stay at the top of their game are often the ones who are constantly learning and experimenting.
Yeah, they're not afraid to try new things or step outside their comfort zone.
It's like a beginner's mindset is not just about acquiring new knowledge, but also about staying adaptable and open to change.
Right. It's about recognizing that we never really arrive. We're always on this journey of growth and discovery.
And that journey involves both our minds and our bodies. The blogger's insight number 24 actually talks about that. Continuously improve and update ourselves, both in terms of our thinking and our physical bodies.
I like that. So striving for a happier and freer self.
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget about that connection between our mental and physical well-being. We tend to focus on one or the other.
It's about finding that balance. Taking care of your body can have a huge impact on your mental state and vice versa.
The blogger uses this beautiful metaphor to describe this process. They say, advance an inch and there will be an inch of joy. What do you think about that?
I love that. It's such a good reminder that progress is not always linear. You don't have to make these huge leaps and bounds to be moving in the right direction.
Yeah, it's about appreciating those small wins along the way and recognizing that perfection isn't the goal. Progress is.
And that reminds me of what we were talking about earlier with setting realistic goals. Break them down into those smaller, manageable steps.
Exactly. It's easier to stay motivated when you're not feeling overwhelmed by the big picture.
And speaking of goals, the blogger's next insight number 25 emphasizes the importance of planning, action, review, progress. They say, if you fail to plan, you are planning to fail.
I don't know if I completely agree with that.
What makes you say that?
Well, sometimes the best things in life happen spontaneously, right? You can't plan for everything.
True. True. But I think maybe what the blogger is getting at is the importance of having some sort of system for personal growth, especially when it comes to those bigger long-term goals.
So it's not enough to just have good intentions. You need to actually have a plan for how you're going to achieve those goals.
Exactly. It's about being intentional with your time and energy, creating a structure that supports your growth.
But not being rigid or inflexible, right? Plans can change, and it's important to be adaptable.
Absolutely. The blogger actually injects a little humor into the process. They say, if you don't think last week's you was a fool, then you haven't made any progress.
I love that. It's a good reminder to not take ourselves too seriously.
Yeah, embrace the journey with all its ups and downs.
So growth is messy, and that's okay.
And the key to navigating that messiness is to cultivate those good habits that the blogger keeps mentioning. Remember, in insight number 27, exercise, meditation, reading, and writing are good habits that will benefit you for a lifetime.
Yeah, but it's one thing to know which habits are good for you. It's another thing to actually implement them into your daily life.
It's true. It takes conscious effort and discipline. It's about making those choices every day to prioritize the things that you know are good for you.
Even when you don't feel like it.
Especially when you don't feel like it. But remember what we were talking about earlier, that whole neuroplasticity thing.
Oh, right. Our brains are constantly changing and adapting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the more you repeat a certain behavior, the more ingrained it becomes in your brain.
So even those small steps taken consistently can lead to big changes over time.
Like building a muscle. The more you exercise it, the stronger it gets.
And that brings us to another important aspect of personal growth, understanding our own self-worth. Insights 28 through 32 really focus on that.
Defining our value internally instead of relying on external validation.
Exactly. The blogger says your value lies within your own stable core, not in the mouths of others.
Stable core. I like that phrase. What do you think they mean by that?
I think they're referring to that deep sense of self-acceptance and self-love that comes from really knowing who you are, what you value, and what you stand for.
That makes sense. And they go on to say that others belittling you doesn't mean you are worthless. Others complimenting you doesn't make you better.
It's a good reminder that our worth is inherent. It doesn't depend on what other people think of us.
So it's not about being arrogant. It's about having that solid foundation of self-love and self-acceptance.
And that can be incredibly freeing because it means you're not constantly seeking approval from other people.
So how do you cultivate that stable core? It seems kind of abstract.
Well, the blogger suggests it comes from a clear understanding of yourself. And that requires you to constantly collide with the outside world, experiencing more, and only then can you understand your own boundaries, strengths, preferences, and limitations.
So basically getting out there, trying new things, pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone.
And learning from those experiences, both the successes and the failures.
Using that information to build a stronger sense of self.
Exactly. And the more you do that, the less you'll rely on the opinions of others.
But the blogger does warn against seeking that external validation. They say, when you care about the opinions of others, they become the gods who control your life, and you are nothing more than a manipulated puppet.
Wow, that's a pretty powerful image.
It highlights how giving away your power to other people can actually diminish your sense of control over your own life.
And it can be a vicious cycle, right? The more validation you seek, the more insecure you become.
Exactly. And the blogger follows that up with another interesting thought. When you cannot control your own life, someone else will decide for you. Do you think they will put you in the most advantageous position?
Ooh, that's a good one. So if you don't take ownership of your own life, someone else will. And they might not have your best interests at heart.
It's a good reminder to be proactive and make choices that are aligned with your values.
And speaking of choices, the next few insights give us some guidance on how to prioritize and make good decisions.
Okay, let's hear it.
The blogger talks about the importance of selective listening. The only voices worth listening to are your own and those of wise people.
So tuning out the noise and focusing on what truly matters.
Exactly. It's about cultivating your own inner wisdom and surrounding yourself with people who support your growth.
And protecting your mental and emotional space from influences that don't serve you.
Right. Yeah, it all ties back to those boundaries we were talking about earlier.
It's all connected.
And the blogger goes on to say, when you reach a certain age, you start to only focus on the key points, only do important things, and only care about important people.
It's about simplifying and prioritizing.
Letting go of the things that no longer serve you.
To make space for the things that truly matter.
This has been such an insightful conversation already. We've covered so much ground. Beginner's mindset, self-worth, selective listening. What do you think?
It's been amazing. And there's still more to come. We'll be back soon to finish up this deep dive and see what other wisdom the blogger has to share.
Can't wait. All right, welcome back, everybody, for the final part of our deep dive into the moments of sudden enlightenment from the Sandu Life blog.
I feel like we've learned so much already.
Seriously, this blogger is full of wisdom.
Act with it.
Right. And I think one of the biggest takeaways for me has been this idea that real change comes from consistency and those small daily actions.
It's not about those big, dramatic overnight transformations.
It's the small stuff that adds up over time.
Building those solid habits.
Exactly. And it's like the blogger is saying, okay, you've got all this knowledge, now go put it into practice.
And their final insight actually gives us some really practical advice for doing just that. They say, don't fantasize about soaring to the sky or becoming famous overnight. All success is accumulated day by day. The key lies in good habits and feasible systems.
I love that. It's such a good reality check, you know? Our culture is so obsessed with instant gratification and overnight success.
It's about shifting our mindset. It's about playing the long game.
Right, focusing on those small, sustainable habits that will get us where we want to be.
Instead of trying to change everything at once.
Yeah, bite-sized pieces.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the blogger emphasizes that those systems should be feasible. You know, they need to fit into your life without creating a ton of stress.
It's got to be sustainable, right?
Right. It's about finding what works for you. There's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Experiment a little, see what sticks.
And be patient. Celebrate those small victories along the way.
Oh, that's so important. It's easy to get discouraged when you don't see those results right away.
But if you can remember that every small step counts, it really helps to stay motivated.
It does. And it all comes back to those good habits that the blogger keeps talking about.
Building those routines and systems that support your goals.
Even when you're not feeling super motivated.
Exactly. It's like setting yourself up for success.
So instead of relying on willpower all the time, you're creating an environment that makes it easier to make healthy choices.
Like if you want to eat healthier, having healthy snacks on hand makes it so much easier.
Or if you want to exercise more, having a set time and place for your workouts makes a huge difference.
It takes the guesswork out of it. Which brings us to another important point.
Self-awareness.
Knowing what works for you.
Knowing your needs, your preferences, your challenges. Because we all have different things that we struggle with.
No one-size-fits-all approach to personal growth.
We've got to figure out what works best for us as individuals.
But you know what? I think the blogger sums it up perfectly with this final question. You ready for it?
I'm ready.
What one small habit, practiced consistently, could have the greatest positive impact on your life in the year ahead?
Ooh, that's a good one.
It really makes you think, doesn't it?
It does. It makes you reflect on all of this wisdom we've been talking about and choose one specific thing to focus on.
And it doesn't have to be something huge, right?
No, it could be something small like meditating for 5 minutes a day or taking a walk a few times a week.
The key is to find something you can stick with.
Even when things get busy.
Because it's those small, consistent actions that lead to the big changes.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the moments of sudden enlightenment. Wow, what a journey.
I know. So much great stuff in there.
And we hope you've all enjoyed this exploration as much as we have.
Remember, guys, you have the power to choose which of these insights resonate with you. Take what works for you and leave the rest.
It's all about finding what helps you live a happier, healthier, and more fulfilling life.
This is just the beginning, you know? The journey of self-discovery never really ends.
And we're all in this together. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.